Trump. He's another authoritarian that was installed.
Okay, maybe. Ah, I'm excited. And I put on my headphones. It's time. I guess you would like to be involved. Yeah, we're working. He's talking, but I have no love.
Hi, William. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm not sure which audio is working. There's a lot going on in Charleston. We're serving Rosa Parks pancakes tomorrow morning at the big demonstration on Lockwood, but the city of Charleston has denied me use of a table and a tent. They must like seeing Judge Norton. I'm really looking forward to our next visit.
Yeah, hope that goes well for y'all. So I'll do a short meeting today, because I know today is Good Friday, and I wanted to at least get this out before they stop the commenting page for the GDOT Atlanta to Savannah project. But I wanted to go over a couple of things, and thank you to everyone who's joined watching the playback. Happy Friday to everyone. I know I've been gone for a while, and I've literally been on a whole bunch of projects, which I will show y'all literally in this presentation of everywhere I've been. And it doesn't even scratch the surface of everywhere I went. But before we get into that, follow us on all of our social media networks, Facebook at Transit Equity Network, Twitter and Blue Sky at Transit Equity In. Also, thank you to everyone who's streaming us live on our YouTube page, Transit Equity Network. Please share this with as many people as
Oh,
we would love to build this network up as much as possible. Also, if you'd like to follow me on all of my travels, because I'm literally on the go constantly, follow me on Instagram at Bacardi Obama. And if you have any inquiries, please email me at Bakari at laborforsustainability.org. That's Bakari at laborforsustainability.org. Well, I wanted to get into everywhere that I've been within the past month, month and a half. Thank you to everyone at Transportation Camp Philly. I had a great time at our many transportation camps, which if you haven't been, it's an unconference where people who attend the conference can bring up any transportation related topics. So we heard a lot about everything that's going on locally with Philly. And this was prior to all of their really, really severe cuts that they're having right now. And we also got to take a walk with one of my friends who's an operator for one of the bus routes called the Market Frankfurt Owl. And essentially, that's the bus that runs after the train stops running around midnight. And we saw a lot of things, and that was a really huge concern as far as safety. But nonetheless, thank you for everyone who participated in that. Thanks are also due to the Rail Passengers Association. You've seen it promoted here so many times about Rail Nation DC, which is the Capitol Hill preparation workshop. So we heard from a lot of folks about what's going on right now federally with our passenger rail systems, and what we could do to essentially advocate for them, and especially on Capitol Hill. So you see, I made some visits to some of my representatives, both in Georgia and in Maryland. So huge thank you to Rail Passengers Association for sharing this, and sharing all this knowledge about how we could do it. Hopefully, a lot of folks realize that it's really easy to meet with your representatives, uh, whether it's your state reps or whether it's your senators. But it was really easy, and hopefully that we were able to gain a lot of a headway as far as meeting with a lot of these folks. So, and let me know if you'd like to get in contact with your U.S. senators and representatives. I think that's a really easy way to make sure that we're having the right people in the room to advocate for a lot of the things that we're advocating for. Also, huge thank you. This was the same week as that to Smart Growth America for their annual Equity Summit. This was a really great conference, and it also featured a really important walk along. As I see Anthony coming in. Hey, Anthony. That we got to
Hey,
we the the it really was a really eye-opening session that happened before the conference even started, where a couple of the folks from Smart Growth America took us on a walk along of DC. And this was from the standpoint of ADA accessibility. So we got to take the metro and we realized how difficult it is to traverse metros and other systems like this from the standpoint of someone who is not as visually impaired or someone who is wheelchair bound. And fun fact, it took us nearly 10 minutes to transfer platforms. If you're familiar with DC, you know they have three major transfer points downtown. One at LaFont Plaza, one at Gallery Place, and one at Metro Center. So we had to change trains at Metro Center, and it took us nearly 10 minutes to do that because number one, we had to find the elevator first. Number two, we had to not only go from an elevator to go to different platforms. Then we had to go to another elevator to get to another platform. Then we had to wait for the elevator. Then we missed the train, and then we had to wait for another train. So it really kind of puts into perspective of the difficulties that a lot of transit planners don't really take into consideration when you're looking at all of this. So huge thanks for them to really allowing us to really see this. And then also looking at the sidewalks as well, of looking at the disarray of it and looking at what could be a really safety risk for a lot of folks. So, but huge thanks to Smart Growth America for having a lot of this for us to take part in. I also got to take a trip to India. So we met for a transportation meeting with some folks from around the country. So this was a really lovely trip where we got to talk about some projects that we're going to be working on in the future. And I also got to ride their transit out in Bangalore. It's really advanced. And you would not think of this, but it was even so advanced that women had their own coach carriage at the front of the train. And there were even like lines on the ground that literally showed you where to stand so that you could let folks come out first and then proceed to walk in. So this was a really wonderful experience. So huge thank you to everyone who was a part of this trip. It was absolutely a breathtaking trip. And if you've not left the country, please do so before they start closing these borders. Like I've already seen where you now need a visa to go to Brazil from America. So if you haven't gotten a chance to leave the country, please do so, because there's a lot of great places out there. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders. If you're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Albuquerque Transit Riders Union meets every second Friday of the month on Zoom. Also in person at the Downtown Alvarado Transit Center at 101st Street Southwest, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87102. The next meeting has passed already. So I'm sure they will be sending us a new meeting for the May meeting. Also, become a member of the Transit Citizens Advisory Board down in the great state of Alabama, as well as the Action Coalition for Transit. Also, if you saw the session during Transit Equity Day with Jeremy Brecker, who is one of our lovely members of the Labor Network for Sustainability. He has a book out called The Green New Deal from Below. I know that it's really trying as far as our government not wanting to do anything with sustainability, but I think this is still a great read, and especially if you want to figure out how unions and how advocates are really getting into creating this labor climate movement. So if you'd like a 30% discount on all editions, we can drop the link into the chat. But definitely go and buy this book and definitely support Jeremy and all of his endeavors. Also, if you're in the area of the Northeast, Pittsburgh Public Transit will be hosting their annual National Transit Advocacy Spring Training. And this is going to go through a lot of great topics as far as power mapping, as far as state funding for transit, which I know a lot of us absolutely need help with. So if you're interested in that, I can also drop the link for that, and that will be April 25th and 26th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Also, they're blocking off rooms for a hotel, so if you need accommodations, definitely go and sign up for it. But I went last year, and this was a really wonderful training. And if you're just now starting out in the advocacy space, I think this is a really great way to do so. But huge shouts out to Pittsburgh Public Transit for doing so. And this also will include a transit ride. So you'll actually get to see the transit system and seeing what they're having issues with as far as also gaining state funding from Pennsylvania. Also, LNS is inviting folks to our webinar that will be featured on April 21st, featuring the Chicago Teachers Union. Now, they've been in the news recently for the new contract, but we want to also bring up the climate implications for this. And this is part of an Earth Day to May Day kickoff event of events and different events that we're planning for Earth Day to May Day. So if you'd like to join, definitely hit the link that we will drop in the chat. But there will be April 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yes, and huge thank you to Chicago Teachers Union for allowing us to come on. Before I move on, are there any other questions or comments? Yes, William.
I'm having some. Sorry. Just wanted to let you know I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
I'm trying to invite some of my people on the phone, which is why we're getting feedback.
No problem. Well, we'll go ahead and continue. And I'll go ahead and mute you. So we'll go ahead and continue. Now, like I've mentioned before, Georgia's undergoing a really great thing with the $500 million that they received. Hold on. For the $500 million they received from the Corridor ID projects through the Federal Railroad Administration to revive a former passenger rail project that ran through the middle of Georgia that was called the Nancy Hanks train. The Georgia Department of Transportation has the opportunity to bring this back, but first they're putting out a survey to folks to get their opinions on where it should run and then how it should run. So we'll be doing a walkthrough of this site today, and I will pull the site up right now. And we'll do a walkthrough of it just so that I can just explain a little bit more information about this for those who are unfamiliar with it. So this is called the Atlanta to Savannah Intercity Passenger Rail Project. Now, if you go farther down to the site, and I can also put the link in the chat, and I will go ahead and do that now. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put this in the chat now. And if you'd like to follow along, please do. So essentially right now where they're at is they're looking for public engagement. So right here it says the overview, evaluate the benefits and costs of a passenger rail between Atlanta and Savannah, identify and narrow the range of service alternatives across the study area, and focus on financially feasible practical solutions to implement passenger rail service. So if you scroll down, you can see the project study area. So if you're not familiar with Georgia, I'll explain it a little bit. So of course, the largest city and the largest metropolitan area in the state of Georgia is Atlanta. So this train is going to be really important for not only getting people to Atlanta in case they want to fly out of Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport, or if they want to attend any of the major college institutions that are there, or just to connect to any other systems like MARTA, which runs through the region, or to connect into any buses like Greyhound or any of the buses like Groom Transportation that goes between any of these other cities. But it'll also be important for people getting out of Atlanta. So let's say if you're flying into Atlanta and you'd like to go to Macon, or if you'd like to go to Athens or Augusta or even Savannah, this will also be another great connector to a lot of these places, as well as places in between. So that's why this study area is important, because it includes those cities that may be really great front runners for running this rail too. So if you can see that you have Athens here, which is where the University of Georgia is. So this will be important for game days, or if you have children attending school, if you have family attending the school. Macon's also here. So if you've ever driven through Georgia on I-75 and you've gone through a town where it's split into two, that's Macon. So Macon's another major city in Georgia where this could really be a huge boon to their economy. It's also a huge point of music. So Otis Redding is from Macon. The Allman Brothers were based out of Macon, as well as Little Richard. So Macon has a really big musical history. So this would be a huge benefit for that city. Augusta is here. So if you paid attention recently to the Masters tournament, that's where it was held. Augusta also has a really big medical community, and a lot of their suburbs also spread into South Carolina as well. So this would be another a great spot to run passenger rail. And then, of course, Savannah, which is our coastal city and essentially where the colony of Georgia started. So there's a lot of history there. It's also a big tourist hub. If you like the beach, if you like seafood. They also have a lot of great colleges there, like Savannah State. Georgia Southern now has a campus there, as well as Hunter Army Airfield, which is another point for the rail to transfer people who have to deploy out or work into the military. So as well as the fact that Savannah is also one of the 5 Amtrak stations within the state of Georgia. So this would also have a huge connection between the Crescent line that runs through Atlanta, as well as the Palmetto, the Silver Meteor, as well as the New Floridian line that runs through Savannah. So this will absolutely create a cross-state connection between both of these lines that only touch once you get to DC and points northward. So essentially, this is the area that we're focused on right here. And as you can see on this map, you can see the different colors that represent the interstates. So you have I-85 here running north of Athens. You have I-20 running between Atlanta and Augusta. You have I-75 that runs between Atlanta and Macon. And then you have I-16 that runs between Macon and Savannah. Now, while Georgia has a really great interstate system, it seems that that's where GDOT's really spent most of its attention towards, is making sure that these interstates are nice. And I've actually had folks from other states compliment me on Georgia's interstates, of them being so clean and them having so many lanes, to where the opposite could be said about the passenger rail. Now, if you also look at the blue lines represent the CSX lines. So if you see a lot of CSX lines come from Atlanta, some of them go to Augusta, to Athens. There's one that kind of goes a little bit to Milledgeville here in the middle of the state. And then you have one here running from Jessup going up through Savannah, and 2 breaking off going into South Carolina. So a part of this is also in the hopes that Class 1 railroads like CSX or the black lines, which represent Norfolk Southern lines, could also share their right-of-way to allow this passenger rail to run through. And there are also other lines. The dash lines are abandoned railroads that are no longer in use, which could be useful in this sense. And if you're familiar with the S line that's running between Virginia and North Carolina, that's what they're using as far as creating another right-of-way for passenger rail to run through there, so that if they did want to upgrade this to high-speed rail, that would be a corridor to where they wouldn't have to share with other railroads. And then, of course, another point that a lot of folks don't necessarily mention are short lines. And these are lines that aren't used for major freight movement, like the Norfolk Southerns and the CSX, but could be utilized for other things. So this could be utilized for passenger rail. So you see that there's a short line between Savannah and Macon, to where that could be one rail line that could be useful for this. So we'll scroll on down and we'll look at the timeline. So April 2022 was when congressional directed spending was announced. And there was a federal contribution of $8 million, which was 80% of this study. And the Georgia Department of Transportation, or as we know as GDOT, matched $2 million from the state's rail budget for a total of $10 million. So that federal contribution was administered by the Federal Railroad Administration, which if you've seen in the news this week, you've seen that they've kind of paused on a lot of projects, as well as with canceling the $64 million that was needed for the high-speed rail project in Texas. So, you know, this is kind of just looking at what we're dealing with now and just looking ahead of the future of what this is. In September 2023, the FRA awarded the grant and the work commenced on that project. So 2024 and 2025, they looked at these alternative analysis. So looking at identifying the routes based on the need and purpose of other factors. So they're looking at all of the ways that they could put these rail lines through. So looking at every line that we looked at above here. That's essentially what they did. 2024 and 2026, which is essentially the timeline that we're in now, they looked at the transportation planning, where they kind of identified and refined alternatives through a qualitative and quantitative process through transportation planning. You know, are the rails good? Do they need work? Who owns it? Can we get right of way from them? And such. And then, of course, we're also in the environmental planning where they're collecting environmental data and assessing potential impacts of the project. And there's also been a lot of controversy for that for a lot of these rails that may go through certain rural areas and farms that are owned by private owners. In 2026, they'll get into the financial planning where they'll evaluate the benefit and cost analysis and identify potential funding sources. And this could also kind of figure into what will go on federally as well, because I'm sure GDOT will look to the feds to see what they could pony up. And five will be governance through 2026 and 2027, where they'll see who's going to be operating it, whether it'll be the state or whether it'll be a private entity like Brightline or Amtrak, since they already run and operate service through there. Number 6 will be the phased implementation plan, running from 2026 to 2027, where they'll focus on specific project and cost estimates and consider a phased approach to implementing the corridor. And of course, 7 is everyone's favorite, the environmental impact statement. And that it's kind of a really, really special case to where they have to get that right or else they have to start over. So we're hoping that they get that right on the first part. And especially because there's no environmental protection agency, that'll be interesting to see how they come up with that. Now, of course, this was, the way this was done was that this corridor was awarded a corridor ID program through the Federal Railroad Administration. So we definitely thank Senators Jon Ossoff and Senator Raphael Warnock for securing this for the state of Georgia for us to even get to this point. So the Atlanta to Savannah route was included in both the Georgia State Rail Plan and the Southeast Regional Rail Plan. So, you know, it being within the state of Georgia, but also this being included within other states like North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and all these other areas around the Southeast. So this actually is focusing on Georgia specifically for the needs of both freight and passenger rail, as well as the long-term plan of us possibly using this as a way to fuel the high-speed trains that will possibly come through Atlanta, as well as an extended, much larger network throughout the Southeast. So essentially, this is more related to this process and what this project will look like as far as the scope, as well as the step 2, which is the service development plan. And here they're really wanting to identify the purpose and the need for it. And of course, if you live in Georgia, you know that a lot of these highways are definitely getting congested, and especially with Georgia being such a fast-growing state, and a lot of these folks moving to places like Augusta and Macon and Savannah and a lot of other smaller towns, that there's a much need for more transportation options. So this is definitely, following a lot of where we're at with this and why we need this. But there's also the environmental benefits, which, Labor Network for Sustainability definitely uh, recognizes is the need for more of these, as far as what we're looking at is reducing carbon emissions. Now we're going into the service development plan, where this encompasses several crucial activities, which relate to engineering, which also relate to planning, as well as the environmental work. Um, but what we're here to talk about is the engagement. So if you remember back in January, I did a video of this where I kind of opened this up, and they had one website. So if you'd like to go to the presentation, you can click through the link that I sent into the chat and click onto it. And if you're watching us after we've recorded this, I'll put the link into the notes on the YouTube page, where you can also click into this and watch the presentation, where GDOT breaks it down even more than I've done, and even to the level of the engineering as far as what they're looking for. And this is the survey that they also put into as well. And they also have other rare projects and studies that, they're also working with, like the Atlanta, Chattanooga, Nashville, and Memphis Corridor ID project, which is hosted by the city of Chattanooga, as well as the Atlanta to Charlotte Corridor ID project, that's hosted by the North Carolina DOT, which is looking at a high-speed rail between Atlanta and Charlotte, as well as the daily long-distance service study, which Georgia currently has a few of these routes that run through the state of Georgia, as well as a study on a possible new station in Atlanta, which is also hosted by the Atlanta Regional Commission. And they're currently working on this with the city of Atlanta to really identify a site for this. And if you've heard about Amtrak putting up around 30 million to secure a site and secure kind of the study of it, I think this will really be a good thing for Atlanta to really have a station and a hub to put all of this in. And at the end of this is a lot of frequently asked questions. And of course, there's an email if you'd like to contact the Georgia Department of Transportation to do this. So we'll go into the survey, and I'll show you what the survey looks like and what questions they'll ask. So if you'd like to take the survey, then you'll know what to expect. So we go to the page, and we see that it says the Atlanta to Savannah Intercity Passenger Rail Preference Survey. Thank you for taking the survey to share your preferences regarding the Atlanta to Savannah Intercity Passenger Rail Project. For more information, please visit the project website, and it gives a link to that. The first question is, how many times per year do you travel between Atlanta and Savannah by car? And then the options are never, once a year, a few times a year, once a month, and other. So I go between Atlanta to Savannah very rarely, because I travel between, if anything else, I travel between Atlanta and my hometown of Jessup. So the cases I'll actually do between Atlanta and Savannah are usually through flying. So for this, I'll put a few times a year, because there are those instances to where I do travel, and it's usually by either car or by Greyhound, because Savannah has a Greyhound station, which is also their main hub for their local transit system. The next question is, how many times per year do you travel between Atlanta and Savannah by air? Now, this one is also a few times a year, and this is usually more of that. So I'll put a few times a year. The next question is, have you ever used passenger rail have you ever used passenger rail for a trip longer than 50 miles through Amtrak, etc.? I've taken so many Amtrak trips, I've lost count. I actually was on Amtrak this past weekend when I was going up to Philly for that rally. So I will say yes, and I've used the Crescent service from the Atlanta Amtrak station. Now, this is a multiple choice, so you can pick as many as you'd like. So I'll read all of them. And like I said, I selected yes, and I've used the Crescent service from the Atlanta Amtrak station. The second option is yes, and I've used the Silver Meteor, Palmetto, or Floridian service from the Savannah Amtrak station. I'll say this because I have ridden the Silver Meteor to Jessup, which is the next station from Savannah. The next response is yes, outside of Georgia. I will click that as well because I've taken Amtrak in other places, and I'll actually be taking the new Hiawatha, the new Borealis service between Chicago and St. Paul. And I may do a video on that. If you're interested in seeing a video on that service, let me know. And then the next one is yes, outside of the United States. I don't know if I've taken trains long distance outside the United States. I wish the train I took in India would suffice for this, but for that, I'll leave that blank. And then the last answer is no. So I'll leave that there with 3 answers for that. The next question is, would you prefer a passenger rail service with faster travel times but fewer stations served, or more stations served but slower travel times? Now, this is kind of one where they're asking you about the frequency of the service. Now, they're giving you the options, and this one is a pendulum. So it says right below, by serving more stations, the travel time between Atlanta and Savannah would be slower. A faster travel time would require the service to stop at fewer locations. And then the options they have is on the left end, they have faster travel times, fewer stations served. In the middle, they have balanced, so you can take for what that means. And the right side says more stations served, slower travel times. So I wanted to, before we even dive deeper into this, look at the distance between both of these cities so you can kind of see what this would mean. So I'll pull this map up and it says, I'll zoom in a little bit. So between Atlanta and Savannah, the trip by car is 3 hours and 56 minutes. And this is a 248-mile difference. So if you're in Texas, you know this was almost similar to what the distance between Dallas and Houston was for their high-speed rail project. So if you're thinking about putting more stations in, so let's say, for instance, they did this and this came to fruition, which we hope so. So let's say they put more stations. So let's say they put a station in Atlanta, and then they put a station at, let's say, Lawrenceville, because Gwinnett County is really big. Then they put a station at somewhere in Oconee County, right outside of Athens. Then they made the Athens station. Then they made a station between here and Augusta. Then they made an Augusta station. Then they made a station somewhere in between there and maybe Statesboro, which is where Georgia Southern is. And they made another station in Effingham County, and then they made a station in Savannah. That would probably take maybe estimating 5 or 6 hours. At that point, it doesn't really rival or hold a candle to how that would compare to driving or even taking a Greyhound bus. But if you did one that had a station in Atlanta, then had a station in Macon, then maybe say had a station in Dublin, which is a big stop on I-16, and then had a station in Savannah, and that was it. So 4 stations, you probably could make that case because you're traveling much faster. You're not stopping as much. And I think that's a really important concept of folks who are not as familiar with public transportation to really gather, is that the more times you stop, the slower your service is going to be. So that's just kind of to put this into perspective of what you're looking at when you're trying to gain a sense of do you want fewer stops but more stations served, or do you want more stations served but slower travel times? So for this one, I'm going to put faster travel times, fewer stations served. Because knowing my home state of Georgia, I know they're not really going to try to put so many stations because that's more operating costs for them or whomever's going to run it. So that's where I'll put. Now you can put whatever you would like for this, but just make sure that you're making a special case based on your scenario. So like if you live in a place like Swainsboro, which is also in the study area, and you really want a station there, that's going to involve a lot of advocacy on a lot of folks' part, on your part, as well as the city and the county that it's in itself, in really trying to bring this station up. And if you've historically had a station from the days of the Nancy Hanks train, I think that would be an important part to put this in to really highlight, how we traveled back in the day. The next question is, would you prioritize service start date and ease of implementation or highest quality rail service? So this is also another operations question. So it's giving you the options, and the options were the same as the last time where it's on a pendulum. The left side says fastest implementation, but have to make compromises. The middle is balanced, and then the right side is highest quality rail service, but uncertain implementation. Now, for this, I want them to do it right the first time. I don't want there to be so many delays, so many difficulties that they end up having to cease service. However, I also want this in my lifetime. I don't want to be, at a certain age and now wanting to take this and now I'm retired and I can't, and I really have no use for it. So for this, I'll probably put balanced. But you use your own discernment as you want. Now, the next question is another multiple choice. Oh, no, this is a ranking question. So it says, rank the following project goals based on your priority. So the first option is support regional and local economic development objectives. So William Hamilton and I have talked about economic development being a strategy within the transit in Charleston because Charleston's a big tourist place. And the fact of using public transportation as a tool for that, knowing that a lot of folks who work at these hotels and these restaurants would most likely be using public transportation to get to work, as well as with tourists being able to come in, being able to fly in, as well as being able to take Amtrak in, and that being a first and last mile connectivity tool. So that will be a reason for that. The second one is increase resiliency in the transportation network. Now, this involves environment. So I'm glad they put this in. Now, if you were witness to within the past, I would say 7 or 8 months, Georgia's not really done well as far as climate. They got hit by 2 hurricanes, and then like 75% of the state got snowed on back in January. So resiliency would definitely help, and especially in the terms of evacuations. So in the rare case where a hurricane would hit the coast of Georgia near Savannah, this train would really be helpful with getting folks away. And if you're old enough to remember Hurricane Floyd back in 1999, this would also be another case to where Georgia was really, what's the word to use? Reactionary with creating the reversible lanes on I-16 to really serve the mass exodus of folks coming from the coast of Georgia and other places near the coast. So this would really help with resiliency in getting folks another option, and especially folks who don't have any other means to evacuate. The next option is enhance access to educational and employment opportunities. Of course, Georgia's really has a really strong technical college program, and there's also some really great schools like Georgia State, Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Savannah State, Georgia Southern, Payne College, all of which are within this study area. So this would be a really great opportunity to showcase this and having another option for people to get back and forth between school. Because I know when I was going to Georgia State and Georgia Tech, it was difficult for me to get back and forth between Southeast Georgia and Atlanta. So this would be a great way to highlight this. And we'll stop there and I'll take a question. Go ahead, William. William, you're still muted.
Bakari, this isn't Savannah to Atlanta. This is Charleston to Atlanta. This is Amtrak to Savannah and this thing to Atlanta. You're talking about creating rail connection from Charleston, South Carolina to Atlanta. This is important. It's also a rail connection to Beaufort and Parris Island to Atlanta. This connects the entire Atlantic coastline to Atlanta. That's a connection that hasn't existed in 40 years. When you come to Charleston on the 2nd of May, we need to do an afternoon discussion. I've already got the room at Parkside Church all afternoon. We need to do a discussion and invite the public so you can sit down and talk about the implications of this to Charleston. You're talking about rail from Atlanta to Charleston. That's money and a lot of it. That's
Absolutely.
important. I mean, it wasn't until that my dim, slow, overburdened Trump damaged brain, when you said something about connecting to Amtrak, that it hit me what you have here. I can promise you the Holy City wants to hear this when you get here. This is only 2 weeks from now, but this is a big deal, Bakari.
Absolutely.
This is Myrtle Beach to Atlanta by rail.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, like this is really a connection that we haven't seen. And if you look at a map of Amtrak, which I'll show later to really drive that point home as well. But yeah, this is one of the only projects to where there is significant rail coming from the coast, coming to the Piedmont region. So yeah, this will open up a lot of doors, and especially for a lot of these lines, because yeah, like that currently right now, if you go between let's say roughly Richmond, Virginia, down towards Jacksonville, because the Sunset Limited still hasn't fully gone back to Jacksonville yet. Which shout out to our folks in Mobile and them getting their rail service back to New Orleans. But once that's extended to Jacksonville, this Atlanta to Savannah line will be the only one that really connects from the coast to the Piedmont region. And
I'm afraid this isn't the Atlanta to Savannah line anymore in Charleston. This is now Charleston to Atlanta.
Well, for all intents and purposes of this study, this will be from Atlanta to Savannah. But I see
that means I can get people in Charleston to pound that online survey on Monday.
I mean, if you want to, yeah. But we'll get back.
We can go to Atlanta without riding a shitty bus, paying an absurd amount for a plane, or having to drive. We can actually enjoy a trip to Atlanta.
Right,
and that's a big deal if you're from Charleston.
Absolutely, and we definitely have to look at the timings on this, because I know another complaint about passenger rail, and especially long distance passenger rail, is that a lot of these cities, it doesn't really hit until the early morning. So I know that was a real big complaint of folks in Charlotte, is that, you know, if you do take any of these long distance trains coming from New York, that they only hit in the early morning. So I know this is also another concern for this as well. But I'll go into the next option for this, which does relate to this question and to this conversation. Facilitate connections to existing multimodal transportation networks, including transit, airports, and passenger rail. So for the example that I did use with Savannah, Savannah has a lot of connections as far as those 3 lines that I mentioned: the Silver Meteor, which runs between New York and Miami, the Palmetto, which runs between Savannah and New York, as well as with the Floridian, which is a new combined line that runs between Miami and Chicago. So this will connect to that, as well as facilitating connections to the airport, which Savannah Hilton Head International Airport is right nearby. as well as as well as to transit. The number 3 CAT bus runs and makes a stop near the Savannah Amtrak station, and it goes between the airport and then to their multimodal center in downtown Savannah, where you can also jump on a Greyhound bus. So this will facilitate a lot of connections and really get to the point of multimodal connections, that if you want to take something else, you can, based off of this one train. The next option is leverage existing transportation corridors. This is what I mentioned earlier with the S line between Virginia and North Carolina. It was an abandoned railroad line that's not being used, that now is being utilized for passenger rail between, I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, and Richmond, which Richmond has one of the heaviest ridden Amtrak stations in the Southeast at Staples Mill, right north of Richmond. So it would really be good for GDOT to look at a lot of these rail corridors to see what are they not using, or what's of really low ridership, or what's really of low usage that GDOT or whomever is going to be operating this can use for passenger rail. The next option is support efficient freight movement by minimizing or mitigating freight and passenger rail conflicts. Now, this will be something really difficult for the state of Georgia, because Georgia moves a lot of freight, especially with the Port of Savannah and the Port of Brunswick. There's a lot of freight that's moved through the state of Georgia. Like, Georgia had to increase the inland ports near Gainesville to accommodate for that. So that'll probably be one of the biggest hurdles with this. The next option is engage disadvantaged and rural communities in an inclusive planning process. Now, this will also be something big. So if you're listening and you're watching this from anywhere in Middle Georgia or anywhere in Southeast Georgia in a rural area, I would really implore you to try to go to your chambers of commerce or whomever within your local jurisdiction, whether it's your city, your county, and really see if they're really going to be on board with this. Like, I grew up in the small town of south of Jessup. So Jessup has an Amtrak station that's the next station down from Savannah, and then the next station down is Jacksonville. So we're at a huge advantage of having this multimodal station, to where, you know, if GDOT decided to invest in Amtrak Thruway service, which would be, you know, connecting bus service to places like Brunswick or places like Hinesville, to where they're also trip generators, to where people go to either Flex C, the federal training facility down there, or the four-year school at Coastal, or even wanting to go to like St. Simon's Jekyll Island, they can now connect there, or going to Fort Stewart. Those would be ways to engage a lot of these rural communities that aren't in Atlanta, that aren't in Savannah, to get in these processes. So places like Millen was once a station on the Nancy Hanks train, so they could really reinvigorate themselves if they ever thought about any kind of economic development, or even just getting folks to connect into other places. The next option is support growing regional travel demand and populations. This is something I've explored earlier in this call. A lot of these towns are growing. Like the Hyundai plant, the new EV plant is in Ellabelle, Georgia. So a lot of the areas around there are growing. Like Effingham County is growing to where they've had to get more schools. Of course, like everywhere around Savannah, like in Pooler and West Chatham County, are growing. So this is definitely going to support a lot of those areas, and especially areas in Middle Georgia, where they're getting a lot of influx of people coming from up north, from the Midwest and from the West Coast. The next and last option is provide additional transportation modal choice for Georgians. Of course, we only have 5 Amtrak lines. None of them are regional. They're all long distance. We have the world's busiest airport in Atlanta. Of course, we have MARTA in Atlanta, which focuses on intracity transit travel. And then, of course, you know, a few buses, intercity buses, but pretty much that's it. There's no other ways to get around. So this would definitely provide an additional transportation mode choice for people wanting to access the coast, and for people on the coast wanting to access places like Atlanta. and everywhere in between. So that would be it for that. So these are the ranks. And of course, you can definitely move these by just holding it and then dragging it up. And then, of course, you see they start to line up. So for this one, my biggest concern and what I would probably rank is to provide additional transportation modal choice for Georgians. That's the biggest thing. I want another option given the fact that I don't own a car and I know there are others that don't own a car. So I want other mode choices for Georgians. The next one would be, for me, supporting growing regional travel demand populations. I know it's growing. I know it's going to continue to grow. Let's see. I'll just put these. Let's see. Supporting regional and local economic development objectives. Because I'm from a small town, engage disadvantaged and rural communities. I also want them to leverage existing transportation corridors. Resiliency is important. Let's see. I may put this much further. All right. So yeah, you can definitely just drag and drop this. And then of course, if you'd like to just start over, you can hit the reset button. But yeah, it's that easy. The next question is, please review the preliminary purpose statement below. Would you like to see anything added to the purpose statement or the project goals listed above? So the statement that they have says, the purpose of this project is to establish a safe, reliable, high capacity, competitive, and resilient intercity passenger rail service between the Atlanta and Savannah metro areas and travel markets in between. So if you'd like to see anything change with this statement, then you can put it in here. Now, for me, this is fine. So I will put, this is fine. All right. Now, moving on, I think this is, okay, there's more questions. So the project study area, now they have a study area map where it says, explore the study area map below and provide any comments you have to the project team. You can place a marker on the map and then use the text box below the map to make a comment about this location. You can add more points and comments by clicking the plus sign above next to the one. So this is the plus sign that they were talking about. Now, when I first look at this, this was probably the most difficult part of this whole survey, because it involves you to really think about and add more things to it. So I'll go slow with this because this was also a learning process for me. So I'll zoom in, and of course, when you kind of move it, it says use control and zoom. So I'd recommend you do this on a computer. So you'll hit the control button, and if you're not really familiar with the keyboard, the control button is the furthest bottom left key on your computer. So you'll hold the control button, and then with your mouse, with the button in the middle, you can just roll it above, and it'll zoom in. So that way you're able to zoom in and put your comment and traverse around this map. So if you can see, like, this gray section is essentially the whole service area. So if you can see, the service area goes from everywhere in Metro Atlanta to everywhere in Athens to Augusta, a lot of the South Carolina suburbs of Augusta, down all the way to Southeast Georgia along the coast to Savannah, and then a lot of the Savannah suburbs like Jasper County and Beaufort County. So if you have any questions or comments, so William, you mentioned about how this is a project for the Southeast as well, for South Carolina. If you have any folks that live in Jasper or Beaufort County, or even in Aiken County up near Augusta, invite them to do the survey, because this would also be another great connection to get some folks who are also could benefit from this as well. So I want to put a comment on my hometown, which is Jessup. So Jessup's in the service area, and it's at the intersection of the CSX and Norfolk Southern railroads. So reading it again, it says you can add more points and comments by clicking the sign above, the plus sign. So I'll see if I can put a comment, and I put the comment here. So basically I just clicked it and it put this marker here on Jessup. And then below you can put your comment here. And it says, what is your comment on the location you marked above? So I'll put the comment basically saying that I would like for an actual station or upgrades to the station to be made at Jessup. Because right now, currently, we have a waiting room at the station in Jessup, but it's only open during the times where trains are running. So for instance, I know the trains come in Jessup around 7:45 in the morning coming south from New York, and they leave around 6:30 p.m. at night going north towards New York. So, and also one of the issues that I have with the station is that you have to step up. So it's not one of those stations where you have like a platform. You literally could just walk onto the train. You have to actually step up. So for people who aren't as strong to really step up with this, and especially like if you're carrying large bags, that's a really big issue. So for the comment that I'll put here is, I would like to see an upgrades to the Jessup Amtrak station, such as raised platforms, which is essentially what that is, and a real time arrival clock with updates on delays. All right, so that's essentially the thing, and it's something small. Like I would want something that would have raised platforms so that it's easier for us to get on the train and it's not delayed as much. But I would also like timetables similar to what's available in DC and Philly, Baltimore, and New York, to where they give you updates if the train's delayed. And especially because this runs along CSX lines, we're always at the whim of whatever CSX train runs through here. So we're not able to ever just have a train that just runs through. We always have to wait for CSX trains because they own the tracks, so they get the priority. So I would at least want upgrades to happen to the station. Now, oh, excuse me. Now, something else I would also like to see, I would also like for there to be some connecting Amtrak throughway service to places like Brunswick and Hinesville.
Charleston.
I mean, you might as well just take the train.
Charleston, Bakari.
But what's the point of having throughway service if you could just take the train to Charleston from here?
We haven't been able to take the train to Atlanta since 1963. I mean,
I know,
unless you go all the way down to Jacksonville or all the way up to Union Station in DC.
I know, but this is the other line. This is the Silver Meteor, and the yeah, that's the only train that stops here.
I mean, I and Wendy could go to Atlanta. Right now, it's either an absurd amount on the plane or a soul grinding day on Greyhound.
Yeah, we'll put that comment in later, but that's the comment I wanted to make for Jessup. So I'll put another comment, and the way that you put in another comment is you hit the plus button here. So I put that comment in, and if you go back to number one, you see that the marker's still there and the comment's still there. So number two, I wanted to focus on Savannah. So we'll do Control Zoom, and we'll go to the Amtrak station, which is somewhere here. I think it's here. No, it's here.
Bakari, excuse me, it's Anthony. In my case, if I wanted to add something, add a comment, do I just simply email it to you and you put it in, or because I'm trying to hold the control and drag the mouse and
yeah, you can definitely email it to me and I can put in the comment for you.
Right.
So for this one, Savannah is a special case because Savannah has 3 lines that come to the station. The Silver Meteor, which I just mentioned, that stops in Jessup and goes down to Miami. The Floridian, which is the new train that they announced last year, that combines two lines, and it goes from Miami all the way to Chicago. And I don't know how people suffice for that trip, but whatever. And then, of course, the daily train of the Palmetto, which does make a stop in Charleston, that also ends in Savannah and goes to New York. So now this station is okay. And even if you go to the station, there is a sign that says trains to Subway. I don't know what the intention of that was, but it's an interesting station if you ever go to it. Some of the same concerns that I have about the Jessup station I have with the Savannah station. So we'll click here and put the marker here. And I'll put in the comments, I would like to see raised platforms for this station, as well as a passenger rail train from to and from Atlanta daily. I would also like to see a local transit option that would get me between
Explain how this works. Don't like you.
the Savannah
You fucked us.
Hilton Head International Airport, downtown Savannah. So the main Greyhound / CAT terminal in downtown Savannah and Tybee Island. All right. So essentially, I want this to become more of a multimodal station. Right now, it literally just serves as a place for you to get on and off the train. And then, of course, I mentioned that there's a local bus that goes between the airport and then the main intra-city transit, like multimodal terminal that's in downtown Savannah. But I would also like this connecting bus service or whatever service would be. I don't know if Savannah's really that advanced to even think about trains. But I would also like this to go to Tybee Island. Tybee Island's like really big. Like this weekend, they're going to be hosting Orange Crush, which is like a really, really big spring break thing. So I think that would also be great to have this option, and especially because this Savannah station is the spot in Georgia where we're seeing the most trains come through, even more than Atlanta. So this is where like the multimodal process really needs to start. They really need to figure out how this can be done based on the place where they see the most trains, and that's Savannah. So I'll keep that. And then I will add another one. So now this one is going to be focused on the station in Atlanta. Now, if you're familiar with Georgia and our woes with trying to get better public transportation across the state, you're familiar with this area called the Gulch. Now, the Gulch is near where our former Union Station that Atlanta had was. And this was back when we had a train from Atlanta to Savannah. And of course, that ended around the turn of the 70s, and then they tore the station down. So now there's just a big gaping hole in the middle of it. And you do see a lot of these lines. You do still see a lot of railroad line and railroads and trains come through, but they're only for freight. So if you can see that there's these CSX lines in blue and then the Norfolk Southern lines in yellow. So I will put a spot here. And for this, I will say I would like to see a multimodal passenger terminal that will be a base for future high-speed rail to Charlotte, DC, and other cities throughout the country, as well as rail to Savannah, Nashville, and Birmingham. I would also like to see a seamless connection to the 5 Points MARTA station, as well as the nearby Greyhound station. So essentially, I mentioned that I want this to be kind of like the Moynihan train station in New York City, which I also went to this past weekend, where it connects everything. It connects to the local subways. It connects to the New Jersey Transit trains. It connects to the Metro North trains. It connects to Long Island Railroad trains. It connects to everything. I want this to be the case in Atlanta, where it connects to everything, because it's right next to 5 Points here, so you can get on any train line and go to Decatur or to Bankhead or Buckhead or to the airport, as well as with connecting it to anything else. So like if you wanted to take Flixbus, which I think they're now starting to operate down in Atlanta with the disappearance of Megabus, to connect that. And then of course it's right next, not too far from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So like if people are coming in for the FIFA World Cup, or if people coming in for any other large scale event that's coming here, they can easily get there. So if you're coming in from, let's say, what's another town I haven't mentioned in Georgia? Watkinsville, that's another town. If you're coming in for Watkinsville and you want to go see Beyonce at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, now you have a way. If Watkinsville opened a station, now you have a way because it goes straight to Atlanta. So I want this to be like a seamless connection for a lot of people, not just the folks that live in Metro Atlanta, but the folks that live in the rest of the state of Georgia, or the folks that live in Chattanooga, or the folks that live in North Augusta or Columbia or anywhere else. I want this to be something that's not only like a transportation hub locally, but regionally as well. So I'll add that. And for the last comment that I'll put, it at the airport. Because what would we be if we did not connect this with the airport? and especially the world's busiest airport. And this will be simple. I would love to see a connection to the world's busiest airport. I would love to see a rail connection to the world's busiest airport. And I think that would also open up a lot of transportation solutions for people that live in a lot of these rural areas that can't get to an airport, or if they don't have an Amtrak station. I think this will really open it up to a lot of folks, but I would love for there to be a station. And of course, the way that MARTA set up, there's a station at College Park, which is a huge connector point to a lot of people within the Metro Atlanta area. And especially like if you work at the Federal Aviation Administration, which is in College Park, it's right next door. So I think that would be a really great connection for that. But those are some examples of how to fill this out. And if you'd like for me to break this down a little bit more because of the complication of that part alone, let me know and I can break that down a little bit more. But I'll go into the rest of the comments, and it says, do you have any questions for the project team? I think the only question I'll have is, what's the likelihood of the state of Georgia funding this if the federal government declines to fund any of the corridor projects? Yeah, because this week has been a whirlwind of figuring out what the feds are going to do with any of these projects. So that would be the only project that I'll have, or the only question I'll have. The home zip code, I'll put my hometown. I won't put Atlanta's. And it says, if you'd like to stay involved in the project, please enter your email address for future updates. So I will put my Labor Network for Sustainability address and hit submit. And then, of course, your comment's been submitted. So that's, in a nutshell, how that survey would go. So if you'd like to take part in the survey, I will drop the link again in the chat. And then if you're watching the replay of this, I'll email the link out to folks so that you can comment on that as well. But are there any questions or comments based off of what I've just done? You're on mute. William, you're on mute.
I am a dinosaur. I am not ashamed of it. I lived in the era of Woodstock and the moon landing, not this shit. But I think what we need to do 2 weeks from today, when you're in Charleston, we have the room at the church all day anyway. We can set up a brown bag lunch with you, which means we don't have to pay for any food. We've already got PA. We've already got all of our tech stuff, the projector, the screens, all that's all set up. And we can do this from 1 to 2 o'clock as a brown bag lunch drop in, and I can promote that to the community, because I promise you, when Charleston realizes they've got a way to get to Atlanta that doesn't involve Greyhound or the plane, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to see money. There are a lot of people from Atlanta that love to come to Charleston for vacations. If we could get the travel time down to something reasonable, this is a big deal. This is a moneymaker. We're talking about going to Atlanta to see the Braves, to see the Falcons. Is that what your football team's still called?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not much of a We're talking about Georgia Tech football. We're talking about all the other stuff people do in Atlanta, the big concerts like Beyonce. We're talking about people from Atlanta coming down here to go to the beach, eat too much food, get drunk, vomit on King Street, and ride the dash buses. This is a massive moneymaker on both ends. And we haven't had train service inland here since 1963. Now, of course, Donald Trump will attempt to kill all of this because he doesn't want us to have any fun, and he hates cities, and he hates Beyonce, and he hates all of that. But that's just more reason to hate Trump. And in Charleston, they may hate Trump because of his politics, and they may hate Trump because he's screwing with my 401k and theirs too. But I promise you, you get between Charleston and a good time, you'll see what rage looks like. This is a city that doesn't care whether it's broke. It doesn't care what your politics are. It doesn't care what happens to Ukraine. But when you tell Charleston it can't go to the party, these people's reaction is difficult to comprehend. And we can do a brown bag lunch 2 weeks from today, 1 to 2 o'clock, when people are off for lunch anyway. I can promote that. It's cheap. It's easy. We don't have to spend any additional money. We don't even have to set up additional equipment. This is the easiest slam dunk anyone ever dropped in my lap. I got the guy, I got the place, I got the tech, and I've got the attention because it's on top of Louise Brown. I mean, this is easy. If I can't make this work, I don't know how.
Let's do it. And like, I wanted to also show this map to just kind of show this, and I'll zoom in a little bit. Yeah, like, so here's Charleston, and then here's Savannah. So the red line would go either here or through here. So yeah, that will be the only connection, because if you see, there's no connections anywhere until you get into North Carolina, and then you have all these rail lines that North Carolina has, had really big success with, gaining ridership with. So yeah, this would be a really great connector point to Atlanta. And especially because, like, as we mentioned, like, yeah, there are not really many other big venues or big cities other than Charlotte of a size like in Atlanta. So I think this is really great to highlight this.
The train ride from Savannah to Charleston is exceptionally beautiful. It goes over 20 miles of trestle that goes over wetlands, open marshes and waterways. And when the tide's up in the moonlight, when the tide is up in the daytime, watching the South Carolina marshes flow by while you have a third-rate Amtrak pancake in the dining car is one of the most sublime pleasures on earth. I did it 20-something years ago, and I wrote a very popular newspaper column about it, and that people really love. It's one of the most popular things I ever wrote, because there's a line in it where I talk about how run down our old train station was and how sad it was, and the train's an hour late, and that's sad. And then the silver, I believe it was the silver Palmetto, rolled in. And I talked about how grand the train was and how much of Amtrak was gone. But by God, everything that was left was rolling. Everything Amtrak had left was moving. They had saved every penny they had. They put it all into the train. And I talked about how big the train was and how it moved through the rotting industrial infrastructure of North Charleston, how it crossed the beautiful Ashley River and through the plantations south of Charleston. And then we locked onto the Atlantic Coast line. And I talked about a point 20 miles outside of Charleston where we finally got out from under speed control, and the Palmetto was going to be allowed to run it over 70 miles an hour for a little while. And there was this nasty little yellow sports car on Highway 17, and it was starting to pull past the Palmetto, which I thought was the Meteor, okay? So I talk about watching that car and resenting for a lifetime people who had fucking cars when I didn't, and how I couldn't take my son anywhere because I couldn't drive, and that meant I was an inadequate parent. And then I watched I called it the Silver Meteor. I watched the Silver Meteor accelerate, and I saw us leave that nasty fucking little yellow Porsche behind on Highway 17. And I saw us roar past it 20 miles faster than it was able to go. Then it hit traffic congestion. It just fell behind. And I said, nothing on rubber tires outruns the Silver Meteor. I saw a guy in a diner read that column in Mount Pleasant. And he put the train down, and he looked at somebody, he pointed to those words, and said, fucking right. People love the train. The train is better. It's better for my wife, Wendy. She has muscular problems. She struggles. Planes are hard on her. Airports are a nightmare. She loves the train. For people who are disabled, the train is slow, but it's comfortable, and it's safe, and it's flexible for them. The bathrooms are better. They don't have to have concerns about fighting for the bathroom. And, we just sent Louise Brown, the mother of the movement, back to Fayetteville on the Silver Meteor, which actually runs north. The Palmetto runs south. And, you know, and I remember seeing her come in on the train. You know, this country isn't what it used to be. Everybody says they want to make it great again, but they really want to make it great for white people. But this country could be great. And we once were. We once had the world's greatest rail system. Nobody on the planet was close to us. We ran faster, bigger, and wider than anyone else on planet Earth. We had trains going 112 miles an hour all over the country in 1927. We had the Zephyr trains running. And we threw it all away because people that in the automobile, petroleum, and rubber industry, you spent tens of millions of dollars a year for 60 years making the car the center of American life. And that was fine when almost everybody was young and everybody was strong and healthy and the country had money to burn, when we made our own cars and pumped our own oil. But those days have been over for 40 years. And now we import we make our own oil now, but we import other people's cars. And we struggle as a nation because we threw it all away on the idea that a quick trip to Kmart would solve our problems. The way back isn't easy, but if it takes me to Atlanta so I can do some of the great cultural things there, if it allows my friends in Atlanta to come to here, if it allows you to come to Charleston, which this would allow you to do, you wouldn't have to get on some stupid bus or some stupid train or drive for 7 hours down the most boring way to cross space invented in the history of the human race, the United States interstate highway system. It is a weapon, you know, it was designed as a weapon system to support the military. It wasn't designed to be rewarding. You know, this is a project that we can gain some traction on. And if Trump wants to kill this with all the rest, so be it. More reason to hate him, more reason to fight.
Absolutely. And if you look at this, this is what the passenger rail network looked like in 1962. Shout out to Greater Washington for having this map. But as you can see, like looking down here, this is Georgia, and this dot right here is Atlanta. Look at all those trains that came between the coast, and even like in South Carolina, like this dot right here is Charleston. So you can even
you understand that one of those lines is was the longest railroad line on Earth in 1837.
Wow. The
longest railroad on planet Earth ran from Charleston towards Atlanta in the 1830s. And when it reached Atlanta, it was a huge deal. I mean, this is the equivalent of a space program at the time. That's why we're called Best Friends of Low Country Transit. Our organization's named after the train that began that journey on Christmas Day, 1830.
That's wild.
You've seen our train. We've had you worship the train.
Like if y'all seen Transit Equity Network, the Transit Equity Day this year, I've actually played the slideshows of myself, William, and Chris Jackson at the Railroad Museum in downtown Charleston. It was really nice, and especially all those trains.
I think Chris will be in Charleston for Mother's birthday.
Oh, nice! That'd be great. But yeah, I wanted to play this to kind of show like the decrease of these trains, of these intercity trains. So I'll start it, and you see 1967. That's when a lot of it decreased. 1970, huge decrease. 71, that was when Amtrak was formed. 75, you got a few more. 78, you had a few more lines. 81 was when Reagan came in, so you had a lot of these decrease. 87, 90. So 97, you had a lot drop off. 2000s, 2002, 2005. So it kind of shows, and then of course, you know, now we have the system that we have today, where it kind of similar to this, and now it's time for us to really speak out and really see what partners we can really get to make this case. So I'm glad Williams invited me to Charleston to really talk about this to the folks down in the Low Country. And if you want me to invite me out or invite Labor Network for Sustainability out to your event to talk about any of these issues, because it's not even just a lot of these areas, but look at these cities that aren't even connected to any rail. Las Vegas is one of them. So if they cancel the money for Brightline West, that will be a huge blow to Las Vegas, because there's that a lot of people are saying Las Vegas is on decline. So that'd be bad for them. Also, not even on this map is Phoenix, Arizona, which is a city of, like, the city proper is over 1 million people, but there's the closest service is either Flagstaff, and I think Tucson may have a train station, but you're talking about a really large and still fast growing metro. They've even extended their light rail service in Phoenix. So that would be a huge boon for them as well. Also, Columbus, Ohio, the state of Ohio is getting closer to try to making some decisions on passenger rail, because currently right now you can only take it between I think Cincinnati, and then also Cleveland, up towards the Capital Limited. So they don't have rail service as well, and they're a city of, I think, over 1 million people. And then, of course, Nashville.
This makes a rail trip to New Orleans possible.
Right. Yeah. You could definitely get to New
Well,
Orleans.
if Atlanta's not a good enough time, I'm absolutely certain New Orleans will be.
Yeah. Listen, that's it. And I think they're also trying to make New Orleans a really, really much bigger hub, because they said that they're still trying to hold on to the Sunset Limited going to LA. And that's one of the lines Amtrak really says that it's one of the lowest performing lines. But it's so useful. Look at all the cities it hits. It hits Houston, it hits San Antonio, El Paso, Tucson, and then going to Los Angeles. Now they're also trying to hold on to the Heartland Flyer, which it's also on the chopping block as well, to go to Oklahoma City. Which, shout out to the Friends of Passenger Rail in Oklahoma. They're also another advocacy group that works to maintain the passenger rail in Oklahoma. That also is another big point. And especially, like, I would love to see if we can get the folks from Virginia in the room. I met when I was at the Rail Passengers Association, I met Meredith Richards, who is the chair, and she lives in Virginia. So let me know if y'all would like to get some folks from Virginia, because, like, when I say that they've really done the thing of creating this authority within the Commonwealth of Virginia to focus specifically just on transit and that kind of passenger rail, like, they've really done it. Like, they've done so much to where they've now have rail going all the way to, like, the really, really far corners of Southwest Virginia, in, like, all these really small towns. So they've really done it, and they've really shown, like, an example of how states can really step in and really take hold of a lot of this rail, and especially state-supported rail. They support that rail the same way that Oregon supports rail, or the same way that Michigan supports rail. So I think this is a really special case of why this is the case for needing to work on projects like this. But yeah, I'm excited to come to Charleston and talk to you all. And hopefully we can also make the case for a lot of this regional rail to come around. But
I hadn't told you. We got a permit from the town of Sullivan's Island. We have the front beach for the Sunday party now.
Oh, nice.
And I have the Burning Man people coming to help me put on that party. Jackson's ready and approved to attempt to make salt from the sea like Mohandas K. Gandhi. It's going to rock. Mother's fought for us for 80 years. She used to ride the train to Somerville illegally. She used to ride the boxcars like a hobo to visit her cousins in Brownsville, which was what they called the black part of Somerville.
Oh, nice.
And she's been on trains her whole life. She won't go any other way. If she can ride the train, she does. And we're going to give her one hell of a weekend. Y'all, anybody out there that listens to this later, you want to be in Charleston from the 2nd to the 4th. We have beautiful weather. It's good to go to the beach. And we've got 3 or 4 wonderful events planned, and we will make sure you have a good time.
Absolutely. Y'all come to Organize Charleston down May 2nd and 4th. It's going to be,
and we'll all go worship the train again.
Absolutely.
Hey, the train's a source of The
I'm
mother
gonna
and
look
the
to
train
see.
are our magic sources of power, Bakari.
Absolutely. Well, we're at time because we're way over we're way over time. But before I
I'm done.
leave, I wanted to see if there are any final questions or comments before I get off.
I gotta go, Bakari. You have a good one.
Absolutely. Anthony, any last comments or questions? Is Anthony still with us?
Let me make sure this is off.
Well, if not, I thank everyone for joining us. I will put the final title card as just a reminder for folks. If you'd like to follow us on all of our social media networks, please follow us at the Transit Equity Network, Twitter and Blue Sky at Transit Equity In. Also, if you'd like to follow me in any of my personal travels, definitely follow me at Party Obama. And if you'd like any questions or have any inquiries about any work, and especially work related to labor and climate, definitely email me at bakari@laborforsustainability.org. As always, I thank you all for joining me. And if you're watching us on a replay, thank you all so much for tuning in. Definitely hit me up if you would like any of the links that I've talked about today. And if you're going to be in Pittsburgh for the spring training, next weekend, I'll definitely see you there. Let's talk. Let's get a drink. Let's see what we can do about saving PA and their transit because they're trying to cut so many lines. Yeah, they're trying to cut so much. So we'll also see if we can get some rallying and some marching in. But for those of us and from all of us at the Labor Network for Sustainability, my name is Bakari Height, and I thank you all for joining us. Have a good weekend.